my friends, welcome back to my channel and day 11 of Vlogmas. I want to share with you in this video some of my favorite art journaling supplies. So I know there's a lot of people out there that probably set goals for the new year or even give themselves challenges or creative tasks or projects they want to try, and I thought it would be fun today just to share with you all what I use for my art journaling process in case there's anybody out there who may want to be exploring the process of art journaling as they head into the new year. So the first thing that's important for me is having obviously an art journal. Those of you out there who take my classes or watch a lot of my videos will know that I really enjoy using cheap composition notebooks for my art journaling process. This is something that I've been doing for a number of years as a way just to prove to those of you out there that you can absolutely have a creative art journaling process on a budget. So you'll notice that I begin to transform my own composition notebooks by painting pages, collage over pages. I will watercolor over these pages. This is not the best paper. It is not made for wet media, but I've been doing this for so long that I actually really enjoy using something cheaper because it takes the pressure off of me to feel like I need to be precious about my supplies. So this is one that I have prepared for a class that I'll be teaching in the new year. These are ones that are finished. I'm actually doing a video on day 12, our last day of Vlogmas, doing a little art journal tour of this one, but these are also composition journals that just over time I have built up the pages into layers. Lots of different things happening on all these pages, and you can see that they survive and they end up being okay. Especially if you are layering things and taking your time as you work over some of that cheaper paper. I always like to tell people to use whatever you have on hand when it comes to an art journal. You can again use something like a composition notebook. You can even upcycle things. So this is an old book turned art journal that I've been working through. You could head to the thrift store, buy an old book. This isn't something I do all the time. I might do it once a year and work in it throughout the year. I love books and I'm a reader, so it's hard for me to alter books, especially because I get attached to them. But if you're on a budget, or if perhaps you have a lot of extra books on hand, or if you're someone who enjoys going to thrift stores or Goodwill, you can absolutely find a book that you can paint over, alter, upcycle, even hang on to some of those pages. I know there's a lot of people out there that have strong feelings about books and altering them, but this is something if you're in a pinch, if you're on a budget, you can absolutely use for the journaling process. And I treat this just like I treat my art journaling process on any paper. I use lots of layers, I'll use collage, I'll paint over the top of them. Sometimes I will glue pages together and double them up so that I've got some really thick backgrounds. Other times I will just paint over the top of some of those pages and let those words show through. This is a great alternative with, once again, you're working on a budget or if you're in a pinch. But you can absolutely use a sketchbook for an art journal, a mixed media tablet. I will often use watercolor tablets for my art journal, but I always like to show people that you can take something thrifty on a budget, you can alter and change up even those cheap supplies. In my opinion, an art journal is not a precious place to create. I think it's a place to experiment and play and learn, and then you can use higher quality supplies when it comes to maybe other projects and surfaces. So oftentimes I will work through ideas in my art journal and I will take those ideas and apply them to a canvas or maybe one of my big murals. This is really a place where you can experiment with those ideas and see how far you want to take them on other surfaces. So when it comes to my supplies for working in an art journal, I am a pretty simple gal. I love supplies. I create art for a living, so I tend to try out and play around with a lot of stuff, but I tend to go back to the same supplies when I'm working in my art journal process. So often you will find me again with a journal and then some sort of pouch filled with my supplies. I like to have things all contained in one place because I am somebody who enjoys moving around when I create. I am notorious for drawing in bed. I love creating when we're on a road trip in our van. I love sitting in front of the TV with the family, drawing and working in my art journal. So I like to have things kind of compact in a little bit of a kit. So I always have my journal on hand, the one that I'm working through. Because I teach and I do a lot of creative things, I often have 2 or 3 going at once. But I will have my journal, and then I will again have some sort of pouch filled with supplies. I make my own pouches. I often make them from recycled, upcycled canvas paintings or drop cloths. Throughout the year, I always offer these over on my shop when I have time to sew them up or create pouches. So always stay in touch, because once in a while I might have a big batch of these that I will end up creating. I use them a lot for myself, and I like really big ones because I can keep all the things that I like using the most. So this pouch is what I've been using for quite a while now, the last handful of months working in my journals. I'm just going to show you what I've got and why I use it, why I keep it on hand. So I always have a bottle of some sort of black acrylic paint, specifically matte acrylic paint. It's usually the cheap stuff, and this is because I love having darker backgrounds and drawing over the top of them with my white pens or my paint pens. So this is the most valuable color that I often travel around with, keep on me at all times. It's black paint. I love color, and I love sitting down in my studio creating really colorful pages, but when I'm like in motion and I'm maybe doing things on the go or bringing my work home, I always want my black paint on hand. I don't think I have any other colors in here right now. I might switch this out depending on the different pages I'm working on, but for me, I always have some sort of little bottle or tube of black acrylic paint. Again, matte acrylic paint is the best for that art journal because that matte surface is not going to stick together when you close those pages. A gloss finish is going to make those pages sticky, and so I only use matte acrylic paint in the art journal pages that I work through. Okay, I also carry around with me some sort of smaller set of watercolors. These are the Raphael travel set of watercolors. I actually love these. I have about 4 sets. I had to order a new one because I go through them pretty quickly. This is a small enough set that it fits into my little pouch easily, and I can add color to my art journal pages really easily. I mix up all kinds of different supplies. I will often use acrylic paint and watercolor paint on the same spread. I will use watercolors to just create a wash of color on pages, or maybe I just want a pop of color here and there. So I tend to always have some kind of small set of watercolors on me when I am art journaling. I don't necessarily use them every time I sit down and work, but I like to always have them on hand just in case I want to add some sort of color. I've always got some sort of larger washi tape or masking tape. I love using this if I'm adding collage. I also like masking tape to like add tabs to my pages or get creative with collage. I'll use masking tape to add texture to a page. So putting tape all over my page and then painting over the top of it is a fun way to quickly add texture, and I don't have to carry around a bunch of scraps of paper. I always carry some kind of small brayer in my little art journal kit. If you see me create, you often will see me using this to add color to a spread. It's a really quick way to get some interesting swipes of color. If I'm in a pinch and I don't have my brayer on me, I'll grab a piece of cardboard and just swipe it. This is small enough that again it fits in my little pouch, and I always have one of these around. I've got one of these like in every nook and cranny of my studio and my home because I love using brayers so much. Okay, what else do we have in here? Okay, we also have a couple of my painted rocks. Earlier in Vlogmas, I shared how I like painting rocks and giving them away specifically to my artist art journaling friends. You can use them as a weight on your pages. So when I'm creating, I like to kind of set them on a spread so it holds a page down. I always carry a couple around with me. I typically have a few brushes on hand, often 2 or 3 sizes. So a larger flat brush and 2 smaller round brushes. I can get really expressive with color with this one, and then these 2 I can go in with details. I can use them with watercolors. These ones are not my nice brushes, so because I take my little kit around with me. I don't want to wreck or lose my nicer brushes, so I always have kind of some of my beat up brushes in my kit. I usually don't tend to spend a lot of time with my brushes, but I always like to have a couple around, especially if I'm going to add some black paint or play with my watercolors. Okay, the rest of what I've got in here is a lot of pens. So often I will have some kind of variety of colorful paint pens. So I don't carry around all my Posca paint pens. I will pick my favorite colors and switch them out. In my previous video, I shared how I like to have my pens organized the best I can, and I will inevitably get them all messy, and I'll go back and kind of reorganize them. So I like to break into my batch of big Poscas and pull out maybe 2, 3 colors, maybe 4 that I might use over a span of the next couple of weeks. So you can see, do I have any more in here? Yeah, you can see I've got some green. I always have a white large Posca pen because I love adding dots to my pages. Hot pink, and then I've got a few fluorescents, a fluorescent red, a fluorescent pink, and then a black Posca. So these, again, I have probably every single color that Posca makes, but I don't tend to carry every color around with me. I'll switch them out so that I can contain them in my little kit of art journal supplies, and then I'll just use these over a span of a couple weeks and then maybe switch out to other colors. Other things I have in here when it comes to pens is my favorites standbys, and that is my permanent pens and then my white pens. So I've got a variety of Sharpies. I love my king size Sharpie because I can color some dark areas. Again, I love using black on my pages and then going over the top of them with something lighter. So I will often use my big Sharpie for scribbling. I'll use my other 2 small ones for drawing, doodling, all that pattern that I love to do in my art journal pages. I also love doing line work where I layer up a Sharpie and then white pen over the top of it. So I always have Sharpies on hand. If somebody were to ask me what art supply would you take to a desert island, it would be my beloved Sharpies. I love them so much. And then a step up from the Sharpie when it comes to drawing are microns. My favorite size is a micron size 8. Microns are also permanent, so I can work over the top of them with wet media and they won't bleed or blur. I love my micron when I am actually drawing. So if I'm doing finer lines, if I'm illustrating something, drawing something, I will pull out my microns. They're my favorite tool to draw with. And I always have 1 or 2 on hand just in case one of them runs out, or if, you know, I work over the top of paint and I kind of muck up the tip a little bit, I always have a backup just in case. And then my most favorite supply when it comes to my art journal is my white Uniball Signo. I only have 1 in my pouch right now, but often I will carry a couple spares just in case they run out. The ink goes pretty quickly, but out of all of the white pens that I have tried in my entire lifetime, this one comes the closest to being near perfect. I wouldn't say perfect because no pen is perfect, but I can get this pen to work as close to what I want in a white pen. So I usually have 1 or 2 of these on hand. I often order them in bulk, so I've always got a stash and backup, and I will use them in combination with the paint on my page or going over the top of a Sharpie. I'll use them in combination with my Poscas. I love drawing over the top of a dark background with a white or lighter shade of pen. So I tend to have something white on hand in either a large tip and a small detail tip. I can really take these 2 supplies really far in my surface design, my doodling, my pattern process. So I cannot leave home. I cannot go anywhere without my Uniball Signo. These are a really fun pen if you enjoy working over the top of color. I like really messy acrylic backgrounds and then going over the top of everything with a lot of white details and pattern. And you basically can find these in every nook, cranny of my home, my studio, my drawers. I always have some sort of white Uniball, and I always have one in my art journal kit. Okay, I feel like there's something else in here. Oh, I have 2 more things. Okay, so I always have a glue stick on hand, maybe a couple. I do collage quite a bit in my art journal, but often that collage is setting myself up for having a background that I can work over the top of. So in another one of my Vlogmas videos, I shared how I enjoy using upcycled wrapping paper, and this is something I would just have on hand to, like, you know, glue it onto that surface, let it dry, and then go back in and draw over the top of it. Last thing that I did not talk about is I always have a compass on hand because I love really creating details and lots of pattern and very embellished pages. I often use a compass to draw circles that I can turn into mandala designs or just work within a circle. I love a circle. Oh my goodness. I just love a circle to work within when it comes to pattern. You can turn a circle into a flower. And so I always have some sort of compass, cheap compass, in my little kit because I will often take time to add circles to pages and then over a span of days and weeks work over the top of those circles with my different art supplies. So this is a pretty simple stash of supplies for art journaling, but I will say I've tried so many supplies. I have tons of supplies at my studio, supplies at home, and I always return to these being the foundation of what I use in my art journal. I can honestly take one of my art journal spreads, grab a few pens, and spend the next 5 hours playing around on a page. It's really fun for me making use of simple supplies and supplies that you don't necessarily need to spend a lot of money on. I honestly feel like if I were to pick and recommend the best supplies for people out there, it would be getting yourself a Uniball Signo, a Sharpie, and picking your favorite color of Posca, and you could really work for probably weeks within the pages of an art journal when it comes to drawing, doodling, mark making, or even free writing. You don't need a lot in order to create art and make dynamic art, especially if you're experimenting and playing around in that journal. Oftentimes I will buy one supply and explore it in my art journal pages and then decide if I want to keep investing in that brand. Posca is a good example of that, where I didn't necessarily back in the day always have enough money to buy tons of colors, so I might buy one special color, and then if I really liked that product, I would then splurge on maybe 3 more colors when I had the budget for it. So these are my must-have art journal supplies. I hope this inspires some of you out there, not only to think about incorporating the art journaling process into your work, but also to think about simplifying, limiting those supplies, and getting creative with perhaps what you already have on hand.